The
The
better.
better it is.
Had someone put it down.
It's okay.
Right.
Is this one sitting here? Or is it?
No, that's just my bag. You wanna sit down here?
As long as.
Yeah,
Right.
well,
I don't mind. It's just a.
here, let me move mine. Don't sit over me. I get sick from crap all the time. Don't worry about it.
They don't have to take-
Just watch my power cord there.
Okay.
Charging cord. If you wouldn't mind keeping the helmet on.
Wow.
Okay, we are ready to go.
Okay, welcome to the October 27th meeting of the Land Use and Waterfront Committee. My name is Gabe Terzo and I'm the chair of the committee. Tonight we are joined by Assistant District Manager Brendan Berth. This meeting is called to order at 6:31 p.m. As a reminder, New York State law requires all committee members who are not able to attend the meeting in person to have their cameras on and their first and last names displayed from the time the meeting is called to order until the time the meeting is adjourned. Members of the public who are attending virtually, you can raise any questions or comments that you have through the Q&A feature of Zoom. Members of the public who are here in person, you can raise any questions that you have by raising your hand. If there is time following the committee's discussion, we will field questions from the public. We need a volunteer to take minutes tonight. If you are able to take minutes, please let us know before I appoint somebody. I'm just gonna spin this thing and see where it lands.
That was not me volunteer.
Okay, just.
I'll take it.
All right.
I
Thank you.
did them
I'll take it.
last
Thank you.
cycle, I think.
You're taking minutes?
Okay, Sandro has volunteered to take minutes.
I just did the
Graciously-
budget ones and those. ones.
Graciously, not begrudgingly agreed to take minutes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, somebody changed my minutes when I said begrudgingly. I wrote begrudgingly and somebody changed it.
Okay, we will now take
Begrudgingly submitted.
attendance by roll call. Brendan will conduct the roll call.
Committee members, I will call your name. When your name is called, please say present. I'll announce if there is quorum. Mata Abdul Samad, won't be with us tonight. Tanya Arias,
Present.
Victoria Benatar, I don't see yet. Daniel Bernstein,
Present.
Jim Collins.
Yep.
Maya Donahue,
Present.
Al Militic won't be with us tonight. Rich Metz,
Present.
Larry Shire,
Present.
Sandra Sherrod,
Present.
Betty Simon won't be with us tonight.
She's
Susan
Mr. Greeting.
Letty's here. Letty's here.
Oh, you are here, Letty?
I'm sorry, not Letty. I'm sorry. Never mind.
Letty sends her greetings, though. I just spoke to her.
Susan Steinberg,
Present.
Mark Thompson,
Present.
Gabe Terzo,
Present.
and James Vera also won't be with us tonight, but we do have a quorum.
Okay, the agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office and is reflected on the screen before you. If there is no objection, we will adopt the agenda. Members of the committee, if you object to adopting the agenda, please raise your hand. Seeing no objections, the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. The minutes from the September 29th meeting were distributed ahead of time by the board or the board office. If there is no objection, we will adopt the minutes as drafted. Members of the committee, if you object to adopting the minutes, please raise your hand. Seeing no objection, the minutes from the September 29th meeting are adopted. They will soon be available on the CB6 website. In order to conduct an efficient meeting, let's observe a few ground rules. No one may speak until granted the floor. Committee members who are here in person, if you have a question about committee business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand and I will identify you so you can speak. Committee members unable to attend in person, if you have a question about committee business, you may raise your hand through Zoom and I will identify you so you can speak. All committee members, it is extremely important that only one person speak at a time so that members of the public watching at home can understand what is being said by each committee member. The chat function for committee members present via Zoom should not be used for committee business or questions about agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. Chat should be used only to alert us to any technical difficulties you are having or to state in writing information like an email address that was already stated aloud on the record during the meeting. Okay, now on to tonight's mercifully short agenda. continued discussion of the faith-based Affordable Housing Act. Now, we had some kind of scheduling conflicts with one city and one state agency, so we got a one-piece agenda tonight, so hopefully we will be out of here at a reasonable amount of time. I watched last month's meeting regarding the faith-based affordable housing bill and the temperature of the room. Well, in the words of my mother, I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. Now, with this committee and this community board prides itself on taking the housing crisis very seriously and taking for the production of affordable housing very seriously. So my hope for this evening is to we're going to listen to George and go over the answers we got from the Office of Assemblymember Alex Flores and see if there is perhaps, and I'm not going to test my luck, but perhaps some version of this bill that we could agree on and pass on to some conditions we could agree on and then perhaps pass on to housing and homelessness. But I did watch last month's meeting, so I don't have my hopes all that high. But with that, I will hand control over to George. Thank you, George.
That's great. Okay, so I am going to share my screen if that's okay. Okay, so I prepared a bunch of materials earlier in the year for Community Board 8, which I've repackaged for this. So you're going to see examples of places not in your community district, for which I apologize ahead of time, but I only found out about this meeting on Friday. So I didn't have enough time to prepare something for your, specifically for your community district, but it's close. Oops, sorry. Okay, so Faith-Based Affordable Housing Act, it's a state law, and state laws can override local zoning. And so tonight, what I'm going to do, as many of you know, I'm an urban planner. I do a lot of zoning work. I do a lot of zoning work with community boards. And so I'm going to stay in my lane and talk about just really two things. I'm going to talk about what this means in terms of zoning, local zoning, and then two, I'm going to talk a little bit about environmental review, because this also affects environmental review. Okay, so it overrides local zoning in a few ways because it's a state law, it can do that. But in Manhattan, this section is the most consequential, and I'm going to read it. If the development site is located within 800 feet of a zoning district that permits a height or density for residential use greater than what is otherwise permitted for in this paragraph, then the city shall allow residential buildings on the development site up to the maximum height and density permitted in such zoning district. And so the following explores what these words would mean on an actual development site. And basically, it's saying if you're within 800 feet of a zoning district, you can effectively move the zoning district boundary. So, but before we get into like what it all means, just some context, like how do we zone in New York City? So most of New York City's build form is defined by buildings based on the width of the street on which it fronts. So typically we have high density on the avenues and we have low density mid blocks. This is like a perfect section of this, which is on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, where you have R10 along the avenues, and then you have a relatively low scale mid block. And then in the background, you'll see higher buildings in the mid block, but that's on a wide street, a wide crosstown street. And this pattern that we see, it's all throughout Manhattan. It's no accident. It's based upon New York City's zoning map, going back to the 1916 resolution, which used street widths to determine when a building must set back. And our current resolution is, much more specific than the old 16 resolution, but it generally keeps the high density on the avenues and the wide streets with lower densities like the R8B and the R7B in the mid blocks. So for Community Board 8, we looked at what would happen on this particular site, which is St. Stephen of Hungary, which is on East 82nd Street between First and York. The church itself closed in 2015, but the school is very much still open and active in the community. The site is two buildings, the rectory and the school church building, with an open lot, which is used as a play yard and parking. And it also is where Upper East Siders go to the farmers market on Saturdays. So under current zoning, if this site were to be redeveloped, it would be probably something like this with this, an R8B. You could develop the vacant lot up to 75 feet. You could maybe build on top of the rectory a little bit. So something like this is with no affordable housing. This is what you could do today. I'm going to go back and do that again. So this is what you could do today with UAP, because we passed City of Yes. You could go up a little taller in exchange for some affordable housing. So you could essentially go to 95 feet with UAP. And then if you were to actually pass the Faith-Based Affordable Housing Act, you could move the avenue zoning, which is very high density, to this site, and you could do something like this. So why can you do something like this? Because it's not only moving the 12 FAR from the avenue to the site, which is large, but the tower on base rules that are required on the avenues don't apply in the mid blocks, right? So they don't apply on narrow streets. You have to be on a wide street for the tower on base rules to apply. And so we massed this out. We said, all right, well, you probably would do a market rate residential tower. You expand the school into the base, so you get a new facility, and then you would put your affordable in a separate building. We see this sort of thing when you have condos and affordable housing. They don't really work well together, so they get put into separate buildings or done off-site otherwise. And so we thought that this was the most likely outcome. And again, this is important that the tower would end up being taller here than it would on the mid-block, on the avenues, because the bulk rules would not apply in the mid-block situation. Okay, so that's the example that we have. I think also important for community boards in New York City to understand is it exempts developments from environmental review. So it says, quote, "No environmental impact statement for a residential building shall be required if it conforms to the provision of this section." I think it's important. I think we all realize that just because it's exempted from environmental review doesn't mean that there wouldn't be environmental impacts. It just means that they won't be disclosed, planned for, or mitigated. And that's all of the environmental impacts, except for some exceptions for soil testing under phase 2, which they have to do under a different law. So for instance, let me talk about the Seeker Technical Manual, right? And so what we use when we study environmental impacts requires the studying of impacts on sewers. I'm just going to pick this for example, right? For large zoning changes, because, quote, it says, because the city's sewers are sized and designed based upon the designated zoning for an area. That's what the manual tells us. And the way water and sewer in New York City works is that it's as of right. If you build your building, you hook into it as of right. And so if these new developments require new water mains or sewer mains or expanded sewer treatment plants, under the Faith-Based Affordable Housing Act, the city is going to have to provide it after the fact. So permitting the private applicants to move zoning districts is contrary to home rule, planning, and local land use control. It's essentially moving the power to make land use decisions from the local jurisdiction and your elected officials to a single class of developers. New York City passed the City of Yes zoning changes, as you all know, to encourage more affordable housing and is planning additional major changes to zoning through the Manhattan Plan. I don't know how much you've talked about that in your committee, but the Manhattan Plan is coming and it should be released before the end of the year. And that will guide major changes to our zoning resolution going forward, or at least reportedly. And the early data are suggesting that at least the City of Yes, combined with the state subsidies, are producing substantially more affordable housing in some areas. And really, the question is for New Yorkers and the boards are: should the state intervene with Faith-Based Affordable Housing Act to move land use controls from local jurisdictions to religious corporations to facilitate the construction of mixed income housing? And I'm sorry, that's all I have for you today. I didn't get into a lot of the other details, which I affect outer boroughs and other jurisdictions. But I wanted to focus more on Manhattan, and I think that's what I've done.
No, I thank you so much, George. I mean, this is very short notice. You were super gracious to put this together and show up on short notice. Representatives from a couple different elected officials were unable to make it. So we really, really appreciate you kind of coming through clutch for us. So thank you.
Yeah, it's no problem.
So I have a quick question. I'll start with a question about environmental review. There is a simplified environmental review, right? So it does still make sure there's no contamination. There's still floodplain analysis, and there's still making sure no historic structures are demolished, right? They're still part of the fast-tracked environmental review being proposed.
So right. So there's got to be soil testing, and you can't demolish historic structures. But it's essentially exempt from. It's not even fast track, right? It's exempt. Well, I guess it would be like fast track because it would be exempt from environmental review.
So are there? I got you. 1 second. Are there elements of, like, we could add, say, like a sewer analysis, right, without adding the entirety of the CEQR? I mean, everyone can get out the pitchforks now, but I think for like a mid-sized apartment building in New York City, CEQR is of perhaps dubious value when it adds maybe 5 to 7% to the total cost. And 5 to 7% total cost to a building, the difference between a building getting built and a building not getting built. It's the difference between a building that does get built, costing X or X plus 10%. So, I mean, is it unreasonable to put CEQR under a microscope and look for workarounds to provide affordable housing?
I think that's a very reasonable question to ask. I guess my question to you might be, and my question to the legislatures might be, is why would you give that solely to a specific class of developer, religious corporations, and not, I don't know, affordable housing developers?
Well, no, I mean, that's fair. And I think that's the temperature of this room is the carve out for the theological nature of the carve out is perhaps something that troubles this committee. All right.
Yeah.
Sorry, George.
I could see that. I mean, it's unusual. I mean, it's certainly very, very unusual. And I don't fully understand why we're preferencing one class of developer over another. It doesn't, I mean, if they're going to be producing affordable housing, I just don't fully understand the rationale behind it. If others know, I'd love to be educated.
Fine.
George, I'm going to take, my name is Tanya Arias. Nice meeting you. I'm going to take a guess here. As we know, attendance at religious organizations has been dropping. They don't have as many people donating. They're illiquid asset rich, but not cash rich. And so that could be one of the reasons. But my concern has nothing to do with theological or religious or anything of that sort. My concern is that they're giving free rein, to these developers for basically 10 or 15% of affordable housing. Because that's all they're required to do is 10 to 15%.
I believe it's a little more than that, but yeah, your
How
point
about
is
what is
taken.
the
It's a minority of the development.
It's a minority of the development, so what we're doing here is, you know, with, under the guise of affordable housing, we're just letting people run roughshod over communities, over environmental, over zoning, over landmarks. In fact, my understanding is that landmarks is very much opposed to this as well. So, why can't they go through the same process? And then my second question would be, if these are tax exempt entities, how does that fall when they sell, let's say, the property for 5 million or 6 million or 7 million? Do they get taxed on that?
Nope.
That I can't answer. I really am focused on the zoning and environmental
the
issues.
zoning.
They do not. Well,
It does something in the report that was sent to us earlier today from Boris and Gonzalez that said that the tax exemption only applies on the land that's used for religious purposes.
For religious purposes.
Being like a chapel or like housing for, you know, people, but that if it's like they're selling land that's not used for religious purposes, the tax exemption doesn't apply.
Tax exemption.
No, that's true. Most churches, most religious
Tax exemption doesn't
organizations.
apply to the land that's not used for
As
religious
business
purposes.
income?
Here, I'll find it.
No, I mean, that's accurate. Most of, sorry, Sandy.
And I have two questions. One is, how much affordability are they required to provide? How much is, why not 100%?
Yeah, it's not 100%. It'd be mixed income, you know, between the 20 and 30% range, likely due to the levels of AMI.
So
Like
there's
we do,
nothing-
like we do currently under zoning, right? We have different levels depending on how deep the affordability goes.
But there's nothing that says it has to be 25% or 50% or.
I think it does.
No, it does.
Yeah, no, it does. It's essentially between 20 and 30%.
Okay.
It says, I think, you know, and this is according to Boris and Gonzalez, just what's in the document. 25% of the units are set aside for household incomes with 60% of the AMI. 5% set aside for 40% of the AMI. 30% set aside for 80% of the AMI, or 20% set aside for 40% of the AMI. There's like 3 different options. So it's like at least 20% for 40% of the AMI, or more, kind of.
Right.
I mean, so
This is how MIH works, right? We're familiar with that, right? That's mandatory inclusionary housing.
But, and sorry, George, you said that part of it could be condos. So the money they make from selling the condos is, they have to it's taxed.
Again, I can't talk about the taxes. I mean, I don't know. I know that it could
I
be for
think
mixed.
the property would be taxed. It's a property tax.
No, I
Income
feel
would be
pretty
taxed.
comfortable answering this. Any religious organization of any scale has charitable and business
Religious
income,
purpose.
and it's something their accountant's very comfortable that they do absolutely pay taxes. One could argue the LDS Church runs like the biggest private equity firm in the world. They very much pay taxes. Yeah, on this
On
income if
business
it's not
income.
strictly related to charitable uses. Sorry, Susan, and then Larry.
Well, in thinking about that high-rise building that ends up as a result of being 800 feet from the avenue, you mentioned sewers, but there's a lot of other, what I consider infrastructure that needs to go along with it. How about schools? How about groceries? How about?
Absolutely. I picked sewers because the Seeker Technical Manual specifically talks about changing the zoning district designation and triggering a study for sewers. It says that right in black and white, but I mean, you're absolutely right. There's traffic, there's school, there's all the stuff that we study in environmental review, which is expensive, as was previously said. But the whole point of that is to actually, disclose what the impacts are going to be and mitigate them to the extent practicable before you actually make the decision to do that. And that is completely, that's not part of this.
Thank you.
Hi, George. My name is Daniel. Nice to meet you. Thanks for coming. Oh, sorry if I cut you off, Larry.
Go ahead, yeah.
Okay, this is sort of quick, I hope. You mentioned well, my question that I was writing as you were speaking was how come the other buildings on the street aren't as tall as the example that you gave in the mid block? And you said that that had something to do with bulk rules. And I don't really know what that means and how come the proposal that you gave is taller than the ones that are actually on the avenues? Like, how does that
Absolutely. So, okay, so there's this concept in New York City called tower on base, which is essentially allows for unlimited height towers on most of the tower district avenues. And essentially you end up with a building, the way it works is that you have minimum and maximum tower coverages, and then you have to put 60% of your building under 150 feet. And essentially when you put all these rules together, you end up with a building that's like 400 feet tall. And it's a tower, but it's not a super tall. It can't be a super tall because you end up with a lot of floor area under 150 feet. The way the rules work is they don't apply in the mid blocks. If you're on a narrow street, it doesn't apply. And so that means that the bulk packing rules, as we call them, would not apply in the mid block location. And so you could essentially do a taller tower. Now it's the same size as those other buildings, right? They're the same FAR, but because you don't have the same bulk uh, regulations, you could build a taller tower. You know, it's a difference between like a 700-foot tower and a 400-foot tower. Both are towers.
Okay, thanks.
As I see it, this is a thinly disguised deconstruction or dismantling of the zoning resolution as it applies to New York City. And it's just incompatible with all of the efforts that have incrementally been approved over time and tested and then changed, including our city of Yes. So I cannot imagine this being a help for us here in Manhattan. And it will just create the kind of nightmare that you showed with that building and probably a whole bunch of others we haven't yet imagined.
George,
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
George, I'm old enough to remember canyon laws. Is this part of what we used to call the canyon laws, where you don't build in between the avenues to at least provide some sunshine to New Yorkers?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's essentially the pattern of New York City development, at least in Manhattan anyway,
Yeah.
where you on the narrow streets, where the streets are narrower, you build shorter buildings. And again, that goes all the way back to 1916. That's how the original resolution was designed, is that shorter buildings would go on the narrower streets.
Yeah, so it's a statement, really, not a question. Thanks, George. I think Tanya, to your point, and to Larry's point, this does amount to a bypassing of a lot of what we have been trying to do over the years in terms of create affordable housing, but not also destroy entire neighborhoods. And I think
Right.
I've seen more than a dozen or so locations within our district that I think would be very similar to be overdeveloped in much the same way that 80th Street or 83rd Street, I think it was, development could be done. And I would be very concerned with bypassing the checks and balances to make sure that the transportation and all of the other critical infrastructure components are actually in place to support a larger development, let alone what would most likely in most of our districts, whether it's in Gramercy, Murray Hill, Kips Bay, Turtle Bay, any of these, be probably considered overdevelopment by the surrounding community. So I will stop by not calling for a motion against it, but I will strongly recommend we do that.
I think you made a good point, especially in the example that we saw, and I'm sure there's many examples like that. in our district of where we're talking about the environmental impact statement and all those things that we should still value and measuring and understanding and planning for. But also in that example, he was talking about this is a play area. This is where they go for their farmers market every week. And how much of that's not even measured in environmental impact, which is measured in community input. And I think fast tracking it, you're going to lose a lot of spaces like that when Manhattan already doesn't have a lot of spaces like that. And I think those are really important to preserve while we're also trying to build affordable housing, especially when this doesn't provide a large percentage of housing.
Sandy.
I wasn't privy to what was passed out from our assembly member and senator. Could someone summarize it for the people watching?
Yeah, absolutely. We're gonna put it on the screen.
Yes. Put it on the screen. Already.
And so I have a question, George. Seeker is generally considered onerous by international standards. And I think I wasn't in the room with these legislators who are making this, but I imagine some of the point of this bill is to sort of test drive a way to make Seeker more efficient. In your opinion as a planner, I mean, it sounds that you are amenable to the idea that it is expensive and it is time consuming. Are there fixes or shortcuts that you think could accomplish the same goal without, again, tacking 5, 7, 8% on to the cost of building construction?
Well, I mean, so we just passed something, was it last year or earlier this year, called Green Fast Track, right? Which says that if you're doing a residential building under 250 units and you don't have to do an environmental review, right? And so it's essentially saying, well, if you're doing a modest development that's not over 210 feet tall, I think, and it has a relatively modest number of units, but still in the hundreds, you don't have to do one. And so, it's saying that, well, if you're doing a bigger development, well, then you might have to do one. That seems to make some sense to me, but I don't know what the right number is. I have no idea, right? But I'm just saying that message about environmental review is onerous and is, especially for mid and small size developments, has been heard and has been addressed.
I'd also like to, they say that locals have downsized over the decades. Is that a fact in our district?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
In the document that we're looking at, it goes through the typical, we need more housing, of course we do. Mm-hmm. But it says that in New York City, many blocks have been intentionally downsized over the decades because of local opposition to new housing. Is that the case in CB6?
Not at all. Not at all.
I mean, in the 1980s, there was the mid-blocks contextual zoning, but I think not since the 1980s in Manhattan has that happened. At least I can't think of it. I mean, what they're talking about is very real, and it happened out in Eastern Queens, where a lot of these single family districts or single family housing districts got rezoned so that the zoning fit the built context. And that happened a lot during the Bloomberg administration, but that really wasn't a Manhattan thing.
Yeah,
Sorry, Tanya, next.
Yesterday, I was the moderator on a panel for the New York City, the Council of New York City Co-ops and Condos on affordability. Okay. And the issue with affordable housing in New York, it's not only a matter of supply and demand. It's also a matter of how it's almost impossible for the existing stock of housing to even afford to live in Manhattan. And the reason is that it's not only because there's not enough affordable housing. It's because your insurance is up, your taxes are up, your mortgages are up. your local laws, the 97, the local law 11, the FISC program, the this, the that, and the other. It makes it almost impossible for anyone to afford housing. So you can't take affordable housing as a concept separate from what happens in the city, which is that it's a continuous
Regulatory
barrage
burden.
of burdens on the residents of the city.
And the landlords.
And the landlords, and you know, you have rent stabilized apartments or rent controlled apartments, but the costs for the landlords don't stop. And this is part of the problem. So it has to be an integrated program where I'm just upset at the fact that they use this thin veneer of affordable housing to color all kinds of things that make it sound like it's so great, and then they don't really get to the real problem. And the real problem of in New York City, there's only 32% of homeownership. That is unheard of. The rest of the country has 66% of homeownership. And part of that is that we keep building, you know, these rentals and more rentals and more rentals, and it's the developers who are getting rich. But the fact of the matter is that people who live in condos and co-ops are getting completely overrun by costs. I know because I'm president of my board, and I can tell you that balancing a budget for a building is a nightmare.
No, absolutely. And I think, we've talked about that offline. I not sure though how it weighs into an objection or in favor of this bill.
It does, because with this bill, you know, they're jumping on the affordable housing bandwagon and running roughshod over zoning, over environmental impact studies, over communities, over the preference of the communities, and over the voice of the communities. That's why I'm opposed to it.
Yeah. Dang.
Thanks. George, to be honest, I have tons more questions for you based on your presentation, but I know that we're also having a debate, so I'll be conscious of that. One question that I have is like specifically about what in the environmental review is sort of voided by this bill versus what is still maintained. In the bill itself, like it says, full environmental reviews under the State Environmental Quality Review Act, that's SEQRA spelled differently, SEQRA,
Yeah.
would not be required.
State.
Yeah, that's the state, and it talks about state standards. And so I'm sort of still new to the committee. I don't really know the difference between the state environmental quality review versus the city environmental quality review. And I know that we've talked about some things are still need to be mandated related to flooding and whatever else. So what is being like specifically like being voided? And maybe that's too big of a question for you to answer. Maybe you can point those to something else, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, you don't have to do what we call seeker, right? And so there's
Is that
state
C or
environmental
S?
review, right?
That's
And-
C or S?
That's
City.
city.
All right.
And then there's a city environmental review under it, right? And so it's essentially we have different rules. Like we have a shadows chapter in our environmental reviews. They don't have that upstate, right? Because they don't care about shadows. It's not a thing. And because we have a different urban environment. So we have a different technical manual. But essentially, it's a subset of the state environmental review, right? It's yes, we have different rules because we analyze different things because we have a different kind of urban environment. But if it's not subject to seeker with an S, it's not subject to seeker with the C.
Okay.
And
cool.
so like the stuff that they're talking about, like if there was hazardous materials, right? And so, and there's phase 1 and phase 2 environmental studies that look at what's in the ground, and if that has to be remediated, that still has to happen, right? We're talking about the stuff in the technical manual of the state or the city environmental review, depending on where we are.
And so like practically for buildings, like I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. In terms of the quality of environmental assessment, like produced and stuff that goes back to and makes an impact in terms of the city's I don't know, climate goals or environmental goals generally, how much of that is coming out of the phase one environmental site assessment and being pursuant to the DEC standards versus in the SECRA and the seeker stuff? And maybe that's, again, too big of a question, but that's something that I'm wondering.
I mean, the stuff that you dig out of the ground is really just make certain people don't get sick, right? That you don't have the vapors that come from, spilled oil and things like that, right? It's really immediate level stuff as opposed to things like schools and traffic and all of that other stuff that we think about as environmental impacts. That's not going to have to be studied.
Okay, cool. And then one other question unrelated to that one is this document that we got from two elected officials' offices references similar bills being passed in other states, California, Oregon, and Maryland. Do you know anything about similar things like this elsewhere?
I don't. And I will also say this is that this particular bill will be very different depending on where you are. For instance, like vast majorities of Brooklyn and the Bronx are all, the zoning district is the same. You could go travel for miles and it's the same zoning district. So moving your zoning district 800 feet doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter at all. And then you have the other elements of it, which are small. It's just in places like Manhattan where you have a vastly different zoning districts right next to each other everywhere is that 800 feet movement really consequential. And it's, this is a statewide bill, right? And so it's going to affect different places differently. And, I looked at this as being in Manhattan, and in Manhattan, it's going to really affect the zoning and built environment very differently than it would in most other places.
So
And I was gonna say, I believe in California, it's also educational facilities, right? That can take advantage of this. That was one of the things they commented on. So it'd be good to know exactly who benefits, because it was more than just faith-based in California.
What are the chances that they would carve out an exception for Manhattan? On the 800?
I don't think that's very fair.
No, but on the 800 foot,
But we could ask for a carve out for the 800 foot rule.
for the 800 foot, that's what I'm saying.
I think the target was Manhattan.
Yeah.
Well, the sponsors of the bill were both based in Brooklyn, I think, right?
But a lot of the co-sponsors are here. So.
Maybe
We
instead
can
of
ask for
800
whatever we want.
Instead of 800 feet,
District, that was not just.
Or
Well, what about our other elected officials? Senator Kruger, is she signed on to the bill?
I don't believe she's.
no, she's not. It's Senator Gonzalez, Boris.
So we
and
heard.
Mondani.
We
I can't remember Epstein signed on.
I believe so. I have to double check that. I don't know if that's my head.
We got it here once.
But to use a farming metaphor, we have a lot of fallow land here in the city and a housing crisis. And according to the best estimates, we have
This been farming in Manhattan for some time. There might not be the.
this fallow land could produce enough housing, the religiously held lands to house about 50,000 New Yorkers. And I think it's fair to, for this community board to ask ourselves, in this attempt to get that housing built, are there concerns that are there aspects of this that we were willing to salvage from the wreckage here, so to speak, that we could conditionally support? Because certainly we don't support fallow land that could be housing people.
I think it would be good to know exactly how much fallow.
Yeah.
Well, they did say in the Furman report, so,
Specific to CD6?
well, not specific to CD6, but in the citywide, they said that this
The
could
city
generate.
is not a very good.
And a good method.
Yeah.
It's not
Well,
helpful.
no, but the housing market is one organism, so I don't know.
They said-
I think that's, yeah.
It's absolutely not.
They said the faith-based organizations own 84 million square feet of land in New York City. but I don't know about
And
Manhattan.
what percentage of the churches are, going to be, in Manhattan versus in the outer boroughs?
5% of that is in Manhattan. Sorry.
Yeah, this does seem very much like the past affordable housing schemes or that we've had in the city where all of the affordable housing was built well outside of Manhattan.
The Department of Taxation and Finance should have a list of exempt properties in Manhattan, and it may even be by community board, I doubt it, but there may be. The other thing we were talking about earlier was to whether or not the sale of the land would be unrelated business taxable income. I just looked it quickly, and it seems that it would not be, if it's, property you've held for a long time, and you just sell it, that would not be considered unrelated business taxable income, so therefore not subject to income tax. My objection to the bill as written is this one sentence or paragraph in there that requires any faith-based organization that is selling their land to attend some kind of mandatory training on this whole project, and that seems to me to be a taking. That would be illegal. So I think any judge would probably have an issue with it. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but Larry, you are. Can you compel somebody to attend training, to engage in
This is a weirdness. It's going to be litigated. I can't possibly comment on the outcome.
it just seems weird to me that you could compel somebody to attend training.
This isn't the
Simply
only,
because you're selling property.
this isn't the only instance in which this fad has, reared its head.
To attend training?
Yeah, but I'd like to make a comment on something that, just occurred to me that, nobody has, mentioned before, but in the history of, Manhattan real estate, the largest landowner historically, and still is Trinity Church. Question is, how would it affect them? And in regard to the maybe things that are already built, but which they might, tear down and build bigger. George, have you any thoughts on that?
I think my understanding is that they are still the largest landowner in Lower Manhattan, and I hadn't actually thought about it until you had said how it would have impact Trinity Church. I know that I would expect that it could be very advantageous to Trinity Church and also the Catholic Church and other large institutions, but I haven't studied any of the specifics.
Okay,
Somebody
so
should, though. Can I just say that somebody should, right? You're considering a bill like this, like with that's giving advantages to like this one class of owner and not others. Well, somebody should look into it and see, like, how does this class of owners benefit and who in this class of owners benefit? And that should be part of the decision-making process, in my humble opinion.
Thank you, George. That's a very good point.
Like, if you want more affordable housing, you can also ask like Columbia and NYU, like the educational buildings that California is in. They own a lot of property in Manhattan.
Yeah, okay, so we'll have it resolved in there that it's not gonna be just religious institutions. We're gonna cut the 800-foot rule. And we're all in agreement.
And no.
Anyone in favor?
No. And we're gonna ask that they, that there will be zoning restrictions or zoning, at least some zoning. In environmental, studies that have to be done and approved. You can't just give them free rein and say, okay, well.
Well, there are environmental.
This is a zoning override.
Yeah, so what exactly are we supporting then? There's not much.
I have
I think
no
we're probably
idea.
not supporting anything.
I have
It
no
sounds like.
idea.
But I mean, Parisian environmental review is almost exactly what they're describing here. And as you may know, Paris is eating everyone's lunch as the most functional 21st century urban agglomeration. And their environmental review is almost exactly what this quote unquote fast track environmental review is.
Do
So
you think the culture of
Fair.
Paris is more amenable to being altruistic to what they're building as opposed to New York City developers?
I think it's
They
probably,
have pretty restricted.
And they also have a long history that goes way back. There was a Hauptmann. And so, just by saying, well, they have something that works, so we should try it here. I don't know, without comparing it in detail, we could make that conclusion.
many of our peer cities in the world have environmental reviews that are much more in line with this than what we currently have. I think it's fair to put our current system under the microscope.
I agree, we could
But that
put our
would be-
system under the microscope, and we do it
Right.
periodically, but incrementally we've done it. But in 1961, we put the whole thing under review. And maybe it's time to do something like that in New York City, but not from on high.
I don't think you.
What, you mean the religious?
Incremental from 1960.
No, I mean on high, meaning New York State Legislature.
No. And it shouldn't just be done in this context of this particular
Yeah.
bill.
Could we, do a resolution that, you know, states that we absolutely think there should be affordable housing and that as a citywide idea, it certainly has some merits, but that we see the problems with our district. And we ask for carve-outs for Manhattan as a separate part of the city. Or revisions, not carve-outs, revisions to
The 800.
to some aspects of the bill to reflect what's happening in various parts of our city.
For potential unintended consequences.
Why aren't we just issuing a negative resolution?
Yeah.
That's what I'd like to
feel that
do.
Could be positive with
No.
Yeah.
10 caveats.
No, and my sense is that the committee wants a negative resolution, that it shouldn't be done from a statewide fiat. One size fits all
Right,
neighborhoods.
I agree.
I don't think it's 10 caveats. I mean, I know Gabe's got a friendly opinion, but he's been counting them a little bit here and trying to get something through. And I do, respect the trying to get a compromise here. I don't think it's 10 caveats, and I think
2.5.
Yeah, it's 2.5. And if, I do agree that we need to have bills and support, ideas that increase affordable housing. And, I don't want to stop progress that has been made if there's a way out, if that makes sense. So I don't know. I think it's worth the conversation and worth more research and worth, more presentations or anything that will, I know it's a time process, or there's a lot of time in this process, but I don't know. I don't think it's worth putting a hammer down if there's more that can be salvaged.
But saying a negative resolution does not mean that it's a hammer down as no. I think it just is the better way to frame our issues, and we can still say that in therefore that we want to support something like this, but we have to see these kinds of changes. If we say we're supportive of this, it's too reflexive and it doesn't make sense for what we're actually trying to do. And I also don't think that this is a positive step forward with all these issues that we have.
What if we do nothing?
But we also have to, before we do anything, Housing and Homelessness wants to look at this, so we're not gonna pass anything yet. Larry.
Well, I'd like them to think about opposing a state override of the New York City zoning resolution.
Right.
But in alternative, could propose a revisiting of the 1961 zoning resolution. And I had the good fortune of knowing Sid Frigand, who was involved with that, who later became the head of Government Community Affairs at the Port Authority, which is a place I worked for a long time. And he told me stories about how the different zoning districts came about and how the situation in terms of the immigration that came into New York from the South and from Puerto Rico, and in 1960, 1961, led to certain rules that they came up with that were intended to take care of the problems that were created by a mass out migration and loss of jobs in certain industries. And the purpose there was to preserve certain things that existed in 1961, but in the decades that followed continued not to be preserved, despite the purpose of that zoning resolution, and having a fresh look at what we want to have going forward, and perhaps more housing that is within people's means, and we're talking about everybody's people's means, could be the starting point to have another look at how we handle New York City zoning versus having an outside force impose basically no zoning on the city.
I mean, well, I think that's fair. I mean, the history of zoning is there's some ugly history, especially in early zoning had some components of exclusionary components. I think it's fair to say the zoning codes of the mid-20th century were designed for cities that were struggling with very different set of problems than 21st century. New York.
We also had a Supreme Court that approved something called Euclidean zoning, which is what created the stuff that is being complained about here, where the density is too low, and we're trying to create an increase in density, but this is kind of peculiar way to go about it.
Okay, Susan.
All right, so help me to understand this. We don't like the zoning override. We don't like the one class of developer. We don't like the lack of environmental impact statement. So excuse me, what do we like about this?
We don't like the percentage of affordable housing.
We don't like the percentage of affordable housing either.
Right. Not sure what we accomplished.
Well, so, okay, no, and I hear everybody loud and clear.
They do have the words affordable housing. That's
Oh,
what I
So we
love.
love that.
But
We love that, absolutely.
We do have,
The casino
we-
was selling us affordable.
we-
housing.
Sure, that was.
we do have an acute housing crisis in this city, and this is an attempt with some very real. Well, it's some very real teeth, it's a very real, perhaps, legitimate warts that we are not wrong to bring up, and this committee is not wrong to point out. I think what we like about it is an attempt to use vacant land to house people. It's an attempt to take fallow land and build housing.
But we don't have fallow
We don't have fallow
in
land.
Manhattan,
Yeah.
do we?
We do,
No, I
we
think-
do where there's Euclidean zoning, where
We
one
don't have
family houses,
maximized density.
lots of
All
yards.
I don't know that that's what we want either.
I mean, I totally agree, but we need to build housing, one where it's not incredibly expensive to build housing, where people can live affordably. Those two things also go into this.
Absolutely, so I think, Maya, you were in your hand.
Oh, I wasn't, I was pondering.
Yeah,
But like, how much is, can we even ask for more affordable housing? Because I feel like we're just gonna get hit back with, well, these faith-based organizations are allowed to sell at whatever value that they show that the land is, and so the developers are like, well, I'm paying this much for this land, so I have to have at least this many regular units that are not affordable, and I do very much support affordable housing, and I would propose as a resolution that we reject the faith-based bill that's in front of us.
As
But
written.
as written, but we do propose our own kind of bill with all of our grievances, but in a way, but not as grievances, in a way of like, this is our suggestion of something better. We want to see them more affordable per unit. We want to see environmental impact more meaningfully included, but we can have like different kinds of opportunities for fast tracking and those kinds of things. So we're not being incredibly hammered down, no, but we are contributing to the process and still saying that this is we want to make a real consecrated effort to affordable housing, but this isn't a consecrated effort. This is like Tanya was saying, a veneer, and they're waving the flag, but we're not really gonna get affordable housing.
Yeah.
Are you making a motion?
Yes,
Or are you proposing a statement of principles in effect?
both, I guess, but I will make the motion if people are ready to vote on it.
Is there a second? Tanya seconds.
This is the question, is this for a resolution to be drafted next? or
Well, I
next
guess it's like for housing and homelessness to look at, right? Yeah.
Well, I remember a very spirited discussion in the budget meeting about what affordable housing means. And it's such a broad, it's become like the banner, you know.
Like a buzzword.
The buzzword is affordable housing, but I've yet to see a real concerted effort to really make the city affordable. It's not just affordable housing, it's other ways that we can make the city affordable. And, you know, that's part of the legislation as well. Is, you know, reining in the insurance companies or, you know, restructuring the way that the city is taxing property. There's a million ways that you can make the city more affordable. And it's in this, under the guise of affordable housing, we just battled a bunch of casinos in the city. If you remember that.
I don't remember that.
So, you know, they keep using this veneer and it's starting to be aggravating to me because they just use it as an excuse for anything.
Right,
now.
and I would like to challenge developers to be more altruistic and conscientious of places that they could build instead of these like tiny little parcels of land that.
No, I hear you. So we
Doesn't the
so we
city-
did have a second.
I wanna propose an amendment to merge what Tanya is saying into what you're trying to craft. And to say that, as you observed, that the use of a quote unquote affordable housing is being used as a kind of a slogan. But what we really need to achieve is what Tanya is asking for, is an affordable city.
Yeah.
I'm concerned about the scope of this resolution.
I'll bring that up at another meeting,
I
the
do-
affordable city.
Sorry, Brendan.
Yeah, I know motion's been made and seconded, but I do wonder, given the number of things the committee wants, the number of concerns it wants to include, if it's just best to just start drafting something for
Yeah.
the committee to.
I
think that's really gonna happen.
Yeah.
Draft
I'm-
it tonight, though. Is your intent to have something like?
No, I can
written
draft
tonight?
something.
I think
Well,
maybe we could come back to the next meeting with something.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it.
Yeah.
Do we need to send it to them next month, or should we review it again?
Maybe we can have a joint committee meeting.
That would be great.
Where is this bill exactly in Albany?
It's
Just introduced
they plan to
Has it
vote
been
on it.
in-
I think,
It is
the next section.
in committee in the Senate,
in committee.
I believe.
Yeah,
It's
it's
got a long way to go.
Yeah, sounds like it.
I
don't
feel
know
that
what
we're,
maybe-
I feel we're going off track. I mean, we have something in front of us that we're doing a complete rewrite. And I think we should be voting on what's in front of us, not going off on a tangent and coming up with something different.
Well, if we go with what's in front of us, I think the general consensus is negative.
Yeah.
I don't think, I don't think that a positive or negative on this bill as it is, especially considering what we just said, that it's just in Senate committee, is really like that productive necessarily compared to a resolution like Maya says, that says, this is what we want, and this is what this bill fails to achieve, and something like that. I don't know, I think like a straight yes or no is not the same.
I think what Susan's referring to though is that the committee has a consensus and that we don't come back and renegotiate for or against, but the committee as a whole agrees with the idea of what's going to be put into the resolution.
Procedurally, yeah.
So I think that's what people would be voting on, not the resolution.
Yeah, there's no requirement for us to actually vote in favor or against this thing.
Yeah,
Right.
no, there's no vote.
It's just- Sure.
No, ever. I mean, there's no it's not something that's coming before us that we have to opine on.
Perhaps. So you're just saying, just do a general resolution supporting the notion of affordable housing zoning?
To write the resolution
Yeah.
that needs to go to housing, but I think that we're looking, like what Susan's saying is we need to sort of have some guidance that the committee wants to do this.
Okay, so if I'm understanding your motion, and I'll repeat it in.
Please do, because I was in the back.
So I think that the motion is that we are against this bill. However, we would like to see X, Y, or Z changes, which we've recently discussed. And we'd like to see X, Y, Z changes as discussed in the committee. My sense of things is that we are all, the committee is against it, and that there's a set of principles that we are broadly in favor of. Larry.
Okay, I think that the trap here is that we're against it, but, or there would be certain things that would make it palatable. And that's what I'm hearing from you.
Yeah, I didn't think they don't need to be conjoined, this and.
Yeah, I
What-
think
what
it's we're
you're-
saying no to this and then we're separately to be like consistent about what we're saying about affordable housing, to not just say no, but to provide something that we want instead. But that doesn't need to be like, if you fix all of this, then it'll be transferred into yes. It's just, this is what he's saying.
So, can you outline that somehow, maybe like in a little note to the committee?
What I just,
Specific,
or the.
well, specifically what you have,
Or just restate.
because I'm not
Just
really sure I
Try
understand.
restating it.
So
Yeah, speak loudly, please.
we're going to say no to the base housing bill as is. And then, like I was just saying, to be consistent with the committee and the community board's like efforts towards creating more affordable housing for people in our district. We also want to see the environmental impact studies more meaningfully included, but I think we are generally open to some kind of fast tracking or something, but more inclusion of that. We want to see a higher percentage of affordable units included. I was gonna go back and watch the video. What was I
I'm sorry. What was the last part?
I said I was planning to go back and watch the video, just to like.
The 800-foot
Purpose.
restriction
That-
in Manhattan.
Thrown out as well. And then there's one more.
And it's mentioned by George is why are we singling out this class?
Yeah, that's the other.
Very fair.
Why-
So,
Right,
why is- why just this one?
and there are too many uncertainties as to who is actually gonna be the real beneficiary.
Yeah.
all right, so I think if I can sum this up correctly, is this is one resolution against this with.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt your summation.
No, but I'm.
No, I was
Thank
just
you.
gonna say, I don't think that we should do one, I'm 100% in agreement with
two
everything being said over here, by the way. But, I think that we either do or do not vote on this thing. Separately, we come up with a set of principles, bring it to the other committee
Perfect.
for reflection, and then come back and actually either do a joint committee meeting that was suggested and vote on it at that point, or bring it back here for further discussion. Because these are great ideas, but they do need a little refinement, I
Yeah.
think.
Maya, why don't you draft the basic resolution? We'll
That's
kick it
fine,
over to
fine,
housing.
That's what I was going to do, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to just follow what Sandro is saying. If we postpone a vote on whether we approve or we disapprove of this particular bill, we can start formulating our principles. And then, if we're going to do a resolution relating to the bill, we can tie that to our principles, which we've now defined. But I think we should have some unanimity as to our goals and what we're trying to accomplish. And if we want to do what Gabe says, which is make some meaningful commentary on that bill, I don't think we can do it yet.
That's, okay, Sandra.
I'm
No,
gonna
I just
go
wanted
with
to
what
make a
Sandra
procedural motion
suggested.
and just ask that we table the broader thing that we don't have something to actually react to yet and vote on until we do. So we have a chance to.
So procedurally, how should we
Moving to
do
table.
that? Okay, and I second that.
And we could bring it back.
Yes, next month we'll have like actual things for us to review.
This is clarify.
So, yes,
Just
Brendan.
to clarify, when it's an actual thing, does that mean like a draft resolution?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
okay.
That's been reflected with the other committee. I mean, we're going to have a.
Okay, so we've, okay, so this was, it's been a lovely discussion. I am going to be moving on now to the,
Suggestion, could you take a vote on the motion to table? Cause I'm probably gonna pass it, but you know, we should do it.
And then he's gotta.
it was.
He's gotta
the-
get back to the minute, then he's gonna have to explain in the minutes that there was a
Excuse me,
motion.
if you vote to table, you have to vote to take it off the table, which is a little
Yes.
bit more difficult.
Well,
Why don't you say
A subsequent
you
meeting.
want to delay? Don't table,
Is that Robert's rules?
delay discussion, yes,
delay is not a separate, that's not a.
I know.
You're just making.
We're being right, I know what you want to
It's
do.
okay, I mean, we can.
I don't
bring it
even
back.
think you ought to table it, I just say,
Thank you for the
Continue.
conversation. We're done with the conversation.
We already
We'll
had
put it back up.
we already had
There's
a motion and a second, so we have to
just
deal with it.
adjourn and take it up again at the next meeting.
Technically, he's right, you could adjourn without including business.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm right.
Thank you.
It sounds like we're gonna discuss more, we're gonna do a resolution, we'll maybe let you know what it is,
Maybe, yeah, you know.
but thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
George.
Oh,
Sorry.
thank you. All right, bye now.
Thank you, George. Thank you.
The Sponsors not.
Right, so it was, sorry, it was the opinion of the chair that I heard a vocal assent to unanimous vocal assent to table, but I guess we'll take
An adjournment.
an adjournment of the topic. or just
And then we
adjourn the
can
meeting?
resume that as a business item at the next meeting.
Given the hour we decided to adjourn, we'll take this up the next meeting.
That's right, we only have the one item, and it's already 7:42.
Yeah, okay, so, moving on to, some excellent news. This is the chair's report.
Perfect. Good news. We always.
This is beyond good news. There is a movement in city council to ban all non-electric helicopters from the heliport.
Okay.
This is,
And wasn't this what Keith Powers announced?
yes, it is. And these helicopters will have the noise pollution element of the East River Park will be substantially curtailed. So this is
Because there
something,
won't be any
well, they have quieter helicopters. They have to bring them in for the,
electric helicopters.
yes, this is the rule. And they're for, they need them. So, yes. And of course, if you haven't been over there yet,
Has anybody told Nikki Sherrill?
the East 34th Street parking lot that this committee and this community board has fought so hard to make into public space is now devoid of cars. It is no longer a parking lot. Okay.
And there was much rejoicing.
And there was much, we put that in there, rejoicing.
What's it gonna be?
It is going to be, so construction will start in December. They are going to start building it. We should have a ribbon cutting of some form of public park in the spring, according to Councilmember Powers. So that is real tangible results from the work we do in here.
And there's one other aspect to the project, and that is that we learned that the seawall will get some repairs that has been long overdue.
Yes, yeah.
Is there a kitty park?
That's TBD, but possibly, and yes.
This might be a question best directed for Sandy. At the Parks Committee, we got a presentation on this park that would be in development by whoever's working on EDC. And we had some questions and we had some concerns about that. I know like about the park plan and we, had some questions for them. I know that their submission passed a couple days ago. Yeah, and we submitted a letter to them. Was there an update on that and how that went? Or if we got any of the requests that we were looking for?
What they, and just like the back history is that there's a oil truck that services the heliport that drives through the park. And it was marked out in gray. And then there's also an area that the Parks Department uses to store equipment. So what they agreed to do was to continue the same surfacing, which was, it's sort of blues, shades of blue paint. And they're gonna cover the entire space with that, even though the truck will drive across it. And they said they did try very hard to negotiate to get the truck not to drive across it, but.
Until there are no more helicopters that use oil,
well,
and then they won't
yes.
need, they won't need that truck
They won't
anymore,
need so
that's for
much.
dang sure.
You don't need some.
So there was, they did what they could to try and make it.
Solar powered helicopter.
Solar powered, yeah, and then, okay, and,
Wind power.
old,
They're charged.
old or new business?
USB port.
For the, I'm going to go get more information on, road salting in New York, and so I think I will bring back the more information, because that hasn't happened yet, but I think it'll be very germane to our general topic about the health of our aquifers.
Old business. I regret to state that the property on the northeast corner of Gramercy Park East has been demolished and a new building is going up there. I have not yet seen the design. We can only kind of hope that it's in character, but it's all gonna be as of right, so God help us.
They've been in contact with the board, the community has.
The community or the
Well,
developer?
the construction stage.
No, just the community.
We're
It's,
not, so I know that what we've seen images, it's a neoclassical.
it is neoclassical?
Yeah.
Okay, let's hope so. I had visions of a tall glass tower
It's.
with great views of Gramercy Park.
Yeah.
Not that it will be
they'll all-
Gramercy Park
they'll get
anymore.
keys.
Huh?
Everyone in the building will get a key.
Get
because
one.
It's on the park.
We'll get a,
Key.
Key to the park.
oh, key, oh, yeah, but. I'm just thinking, big glass tower on a historical.
I don't think
It's not a historic district, but it should have been.
What, one other, maybe another, we, the Manhattan plan, we had a meeting with, or
Yeah,
at
we
least,
did.
city planning talked once again about the Manhattan plan. And it turns out that it's actually not a plan. That they've really, what they've been doing is collecting information from everyone in Manhattan about what they'd like to see happen in Manhattan. So it's, they're pretty clear it's not going to generate a plan.
It was,
But what is it?
Survey, basically.
Yeah, and
Master plan.
survey to see what people's reaction to creating housing.
So when George said on the call, there's gonna be something on the Manhattan plan by the end of the year, that
There will be, but it won't be a plan.
it'll be the results of the survey thing.
It's missing.
underwhelming.
And the city planning did give us the text that they'll say about CB6.
Okay.
Fair enough.
And so that'll be an agenda topic down the line, presumably.
Yes. Okay, it is 7:48 PM. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
7:48
Second.
PM. Seeing no further business, the meeting is adjourned at 7:48 PM.
Yeah.
Be dramatic.